Hello and welcome to this fireside chat, dear participants. I'm so sure that you are liking the other sessions, and I could see the active participation from you. In fact, many questions that you asked were really relevant, and in fact, we encourage speakers also to answer the questions. So I think it's going to be an engaging day, and I'm going to have another fireside chat on the leveling BFSI up with hybrid cloud, AI, and machine learnings. And I have with me Devika Nayyar, Country Manager, BFSI Vertical, HP Enterprises. Devika, welcome to this discussion.
Thank you so much, Amol. I'm glad to be here and part of this discussion today.
Good. I'm also glad to have you here. And my next speaker is Mr. Bhuvanendran Kamak, CIO Transunion CIBIL Limited. Mr. Kamak, welcome to this discussion.
Thank you, Amol, and good meeting you, Devika. Glad to be here.
Hello, sir.
Great. We have been discussing the frictionless world for the BFSI companies, and we have, in fact, received a great response not only from the participants, but the speakers have shared a remarkable viewpoint specifically on the frictionless world. Every bank has been adopting, every financial institution has been adopting, digital like there's no tomorrow. But even the traditional banks and the small banks, which were going a little slow, they also aggravated and accelerated adopting digital in last 1 year. And everyone specifically went on cloud. And the second area is using data, in far more meaningful manner. So considering this background, I come to you, Mr. Kamak, to begin with. And, if you could tell us, how can banks better understand data and build a robust data architecture and derive insights from it?
Got you. So, Amol, I think two things have happened. One is pre-COVID and post-COVID. I think there was already a transition or a linear progression of everybody moving into core banking, and companies were like to you were just helping them with data and analytics. Now, what's happened is post-COVID, there's a sudden drive for digital transformation, and people realized it when suddenly offices work from home, the ability to reach the consumer faster, the ability to acquire quickly over your tablet and through the electronic mediums. I think that digital drive is what is driving the adoption of cloud, is driving the adoption of making you want to use data. So now suddenly, how do you harness that data? It's the piece where companies like TransUnion are using AI ML for whether it's for prediction of a forecasting of data, or even simple things like in compute power, where you use log analysis to make sure the health of your machines. When do you replace them? When do you see the memories getting overused? When do you want to overcapacitize based on volumes coming in? So a lot of data points and feedback and making sure that you're able to forecast is where AI, ML, and cloud is now going to be the big drivers of change.
Okay, thanks for that note, Mr. Kamak. Devika, cloud is going to be a big change. That's what Mr. Kamak said, and that's what we learned from the industry. While cloud adoption, I mean, that is what the BFSI companies have done aggressively in last 1 year. If you could tell us, while adopting the cloud, what is the most critical part, that the BFSI companies face?
Very frankly, we have seen, that the cloud, the significance of cloud and the relevance of cloud has, gone through a paradigm shift in the last 1 year. It was anyways progressing well, but I think in the last 1 year, we have seen a larger change. However, we at HP, we believe, that the world is hybrid and the customers need choice. And it is all about, different workloads. Different workloads have different requirements, based on processing speeds, data storage requirements, latencies, regulatory frameworks, and many such parameters. And hence, if you see any offering from HP, whether it is from product or it is related to services, they are all designed to help customers build a hybrid architecture. So what we do is we start with a consulting engagement to study the landscape of the customers and then help customers chart the path for cloud adoption. And when it comes to cloud adoption, if we see what are the parameters that FSI typically, likes to keep in mind, I think the top priority on that is the regulator. So clearly the regulators are, at the top of their game. And, they're more vigilant than they were ever before, and even more so in FSI. So while adopting any cloud, if we were to talk of the top parameters, it is, whether it is your data privacy norms that are there in the country, data localization, regulated exit strategies, because exit strategy and who will own the data, and if, there is a dispute, how they come out, or tomorrow they want to come back to, on-prem, how will they come back? And of course, transparent security architectures, because irrespective of what cloud providers provide, the banks and other financial institutions have to answer the regulators with regard to the security architectures, and hence transparent security architectures, become the, the other aspect to their cloud adoption consideration.
Okay, noted valid points, Devika. Moving ahead, Mr. Kamak, tell us how, aggressively, the banks are actually and accurately using the data along with AI, ML, and, how aggressive do you think they will go going ahead?
So banks, like I said, are using data a lot. I think they have reached a maturity curve where, the old concepts of data warehousing and all have become almost like a stable platform within their organizations. They've moved beyond MIS. They've moved more into actionable uh, structures out of their warehouse. Where they're now moving in is how they can influence the consumer behaviors and target segments. And for that, they are starting to, use players like us for advanced analytics, where they use algorithms to make sure uh, how well can you predict, whether it's for collections, whether it's for cross sell, whether it's for underwriting. You have varied features, even e-com companies use it to uh, tell what's a behavior, if it's based on your age and your profile of your persona. Even the screen changes. So I think that behavior you're starting to see in a lot of the websites. You're seeing it in the back end, and you're seeing, more personalized service offered to the consumer. So I think the consumer is benefiting. The banks are making sure to retain. They are evolving. It's now this tech is available, data is available, the regulations and framework. So, like Devika said, is helping make things a even playing field for everybody. So it's helping things move along faster. So I won't say it's mature, but I think everybody's heading the right direction.
Right, Mr. Kamak. In fact, I have been, listening these buzzwords from the bankers, specifically from the CXOs, that data is a new oil, data is a new fire, data is a engine, so many things. And at the same time, everybody is planning to actually give a customer a Netflix like an experience, or a Swiggy like an experience, and that can be possible only with the data. Devika, I will come to you again, and you said specifically about the workload is different for every company, and that's what you look at it. But there are a lot of confusions in the companies as well. Somebody wants public cloud, somebody is looking for private cloud, then the option came of hybrid cloud. What is the major difference in all these formats? If you could just demystify all these things, and also tell us that what does it take for a BFSI company to shift its data to a cloud?
So see, as I mentioned, the choices are there for the customer today. Okay, and public cloud comes with its own economics and elasticity. Without upfront investment for customers, the time to move in lockstep with business. So first is to start something quickly, so customers feel, rather than going through their large procurement cycles, they can do something experimental, quick and dirty in the cloud. And sometimes, there are cases where they would like to continue in the cloud if their security and regulatory frameworks allow them, if that, as I said, those data concerns and data localization concerns allow them. Else, many times, the customers are, running their DevOps in cloud, and then when they want to move into production, they still come back. And I think FSI is, that case in point, where definitely we see, the customers increasingly adopting public cloud. But the public cloud, the maturity is coming in, and it is always a very workload driven, very selective, very discerning decision that FSI takes to adopt the public cloud. You see, the other options today, the options are so many. It's IS, it's PaaS, it's SaaS, it's outcome as a service. You have on-prem, you have off-prem. There's so many choices. So, I think making that decision sometimes is, a tough one for the customer. And that is where a TCO ROI aspects come into the picture, and often these TCO and ROI aspects do not take care of aspects like security, control, and things like that. So in fact, I'd like to share with you that HP realized this quite some time back, that customers always have a choice between deploying something privately held and something in the public cloud. So they love that elasticity and economics that the public cloud brings. But can they combine that, with the security and control of privately deployed infrastructures? And that is where the Green Lake offering from, HP came into view. And in fact, this has matured over the last, 3 to 4 years. And now today, it is a broad portfolio of offerings ranging from infrastructure as a service to platform to even outcome as a service. So just to give you an example, whether it's storage as a service, backup as a service, VM as a service, big data as a service, container as a service, as Mr. Kamak was also mentioning, right up to a complete outcome like HANA as a service is something that, HP offers. What we do is we combine, we work with our ecosystem partners, we combine their IP with the IP that we bring to the table on infrastructure, and then we convert it into an offering, and the customer can consume it on-prem or maybe in a privately hosted co-location space, and they can actually take advantage of pay as you go and pay as you grow kind of models with the same elasticity, burst capacity, scaling up, scaling down. And also as they grow, we bring in the economies of scale to ensure the band pricing, as they increase the usage, the base utilization grows, we're able to pass back a lot of cost benefits back to them. It's structured in such a mature way. So that is our point of view on that.
Okay, so Devika, if you could, add here, and if you could explain me more, do you want to say that because of the cloud is aggressively used by the BFSI companies going ahead, pay as you, grow model will be, aggressively used by the companies?
Yes, see, we have to understand it's extremely important. There are two aspects to it. Today, the pace of projects is very quick. So anything that needs, is relevant to the market in a couple of months, by the time, the whole cycle of procurement and investment, etc., is decided, sometimes the perspectives of the business change. So it's very important that you are able to invest, and get the required outcomes for business at the time at which they want, and it should be able to grow and scale in lockstep with business. So as the business grows, you invest more into that. That is how the whole thing has to be, and hence pay as you go and pay as you grow becomes extremely relevant to customers. Why lock in capex, when you don't know whether that particular project will, how it will scale and how it will grow. There was a time when customers, everything was vertically scaling. That's another aspect which technology also has brought in. Everything had to be vertically scaled, so people had to make decisions for 5 years and 10 years down the line and make purchases upfront. Today, even I think the most tricky part of databases are now growing. We have options that grow horizontally, and these are all scale out models. And I think those scale out models has given us a big boost to be able to bring, technology to the customers table also on a pay as you grow kind of, on a pay as you go kind of models.
Okay, noted, Devika. So, Mr. Kamak, I will come to you again, and CIBIL has been there in the space since really long, and now there are other companies as well. How accurate is your data when it comes for banks or the financial institutions to take the decisions? Because now everything is dependent on the data. Whether it's fintech companies, whether it's NBFCs, whether it's banks, they are using the CIBIL data as much as possible. How accurate are their decisions based on your data? And more importantly, how often do you upgrade your data?
Okay, so one is the data is, goes through a huge quality life cycle. right from source, that is the golden record, from the banks to the bureaus and back to them, right? They undergo, and now, like the technology is plenty, which means every record, every column, every piece of data is analyzed and sent through a quality inflow. The compute power is so heavy, you can do almost 1 million records in a minute, which means it analyzes, let's say, a column which is meant for gender. Uh, you're sure it's a Mr., Mrs., Miss, or a flag which is valid. Is it blank? It catches it. And this, imagine, it runs through hundreds of columns. You have a feedback mechanism of tolerance levels you have over periods of time. So if it's based on trended data, the quality check goes through trended data. Does it look, can a number be negative? All these validation rules all are gone through. So, and between the bank and the bureaus, this quality check is maintained through a mechanism which of a like a closed user group, just to ensure, if there's a dispute by a consumer, we help these consumers, correct it right from the source of record back, so that all decisions are accurate, and it's all based on quality of data. You've got it right. Data quality is the baseline for this compute to be accurate.
Okay. Devika, when we say, about the data quality is very, very important, what is it that the BFSI companies can do and, utilize or take benefit of hybrid cloud specifically, and the whole cloud strategy in harnessing and, maybe leveraging the data like there is no tomorrow, adding to AI and ML?
So see, adoption of AI ML has been around for quite some time. It's often we've been using some technologies over the years, but suddenly some things become more commonplace, and we give them different names. Yes, but what we've always seen that AI ML for any organization to be able to derive full benefits. Sometimes we talk about, is the technology mature? How can we derive better? As you said, harness the insights best from the data that we have. And as Mr. Kamak mentioned, there is no dearth of tools around. Whether the technology perspective, I think whether it's open source to support it, to proprietary, from broad-based platforms to niche tools, you talk about them, there are plenty. Okay, but what is actually holding customers from leveraging the full potential are essentially three reasons. The first one is the skill gap, actually, because we have a whole new world of choices. Now when you talk of AIML, it's a completely new set of possibilities that are brought in, but it also brings the added, you can say, a charter for companies to be able to find the right talent and retain the right talent. Similarly, if you see, being able to store data today, and whether it's capturing data, storing data, analyzing data, again there are plethora of tools available. There are limitless possibilities where you can store the data, how you can design your access to the data, how you're able to let the data flow in your organization. So it's all about getting the vision in place. So this is another issue where we see the siloed approach. Often we see different, there is data lying across different parts of the organization, and people are experimenting with their own data sets and possibly their own small models that they are building. Often it is probably not the right use of technology, or maybe the older way to use technology was to do ETL, where you first you actually transform the data and then you load it. But today those concepts are fast fading, and Mr. Kamak also mentioned that is now passe. And you want to retain the original the original dimensions of the data. You don't want to do any transformation, because you would be losing some key insights when you're trying to do this transformation. So it's all about having the right data strategy where you're able to have access to these data sets across the organizations, across the applications, across the enterprise, be able to use those possibly in a federated way, because you also don't want to make multiple copies of the same data, while you, because you typically, that's what sometimes you did, right? To do different use cases, and if you're doing siloed, you land up having multiple copies of the data. So can we have a system where this whole approach is organized? And as sir also mentioned, it's about that feedback loop as well. So this is another aspect where the ML ops comes into the picture, where if you're having a common data strategy, a very your AIML strategy also with a complete vision, where you're able to write from the inception, where the data science experts are using it, and then to the application people, and then to the operations team, you're able to manage the whole life cycle of that machine learning algorithm. That's, and have that access to data, that rich data across the organization. That is when your machine learning and AIML initiatives will bear the right fruit. So just to give you a small snapshot as to how we do it at HPE. And the first point I had mentioned is around the skill gap. So when it comes to skill gap, HPE has its own set of data scientists, and we also have a lot of SMEs who understand storage, data, all aspects of data. And we have augmented these internal resources with certain tie-ups that we have with boutique firms. And these boutique firms basically bring in a lot of domain relevant data science expertise, because for many other organizations, retaining this kind of talent becomes a big challenge. With regard to the data conundrum, as I mentioned, it's crazy with the choices that you have, and you have data at the edge, you have data at the core, you have data in the cloud. So, I think that's where we leverage, HP's Esmeralda data fabric. Now, this comes from the MapR acquisition. I'm sure all of you are, very familiar with MapR as being a very strong platform, for data. And this helps to store and manage the entire data lifecycle, whether it is at the edge or at the core, and even at the cloud at scale. So scale is also extremely important. And then of course, from the ML ops perspective, we leverage the Esmeralda ML ops. Again, an inorganic acquisition that we did, Blue Data, which was again one of the industry leaders on ML ops. And this helps the customers to manage the life cycle of all their machine learning, models. So this platform comes with its own app store, and it has its own repository of all the open source AI ML tools. We can also plug in, all the tools that the customer is pre-owning today. So what this does is that it gives a complete consolidated, platform for the customers to run their whole, AI ML operation, and achieve their vision. So that's how people can harness, I think, the best from their AI ML initiative.
Okay, I will take one important question in both of you. And whenever it comes to data, the security or the privacy is a very, very big area right now. The data protection bill is pending, and they are talking about the privacy. But many other countries have also gone really aggressive in protecting the data, like GDPR, right? From the Europe. So, Mr. Kamak, your views, because you are owning, you own a data mine actually, right? So how do you want to protect that? Because there are hackers, and they're just doing anything and everything to hack that. So one, how are you going to prevent it? And second, even BFSI companies are taking data from you. How do you think they should also protect themselves?
So, I'll just take a step back, on your question on FSI and other things leading to this, right? One is, to even what Devika said, one is this has to be a purpose. So if you have a cloud strategy or you're using AI/ML, anything needs a purpose. So you can't just, lift and shift. So you got to say, I've got to be cloud ready. So I think those are step one. Step two is as you have a purpose, you understand you're moving to a different ecosystem. The foundation has to be strong, and the foundation are things like what you're referring to is the network layer, the security layer. How do you provision for compute power? How do you make sure things are repeatable? How do you make sure it's auditable? And you create those layers of uh, controls and protections. And then once you have made sure the edge, and then when you're going in, with data privacy and protection coming in, you invest a lot. What Devika also talked about is the data fabric. And one of the key components is data protection itself, right? So how do you store PI information? How do you store other information? Each has its own categorization. The metadata of data is critical. So the information services around it, you store it. And that's how you, even when you backflip it, so, companies are like us, which actually thrive on producing trended data, whether it's for a MSME, CMR score we produce or a CIBIL score. It's based on high frequency storage and making sure there's protection to the consumer. So these layers are critical, and what we call are the foundational services. So you have enough technology where you can encrypt, you can put them in data vaults, you can make sure you're federating and tokenizing data in such a way that these technologies are used only for a purpose, and then the law itself takes care by itself. That's the real intent.
So actually, when Sir was talking, it makes me only think that data is like nuclear power. So if you, and it's becoming more so, right? So if you can harness the energy out of it, super. It's like there is no end to what you can do with it. But if there is a leak, then I think we all know, right, what can happen and what the USSR saw so many years back, and it can be very catastrophic, yeah, for the organization.
No, true. It's a valid example or analogy, Devika. But if you could tell us more, Devika, here on addressing the security concerns across all emerging technologies, because technology is evolving, and we are adopting new technologies almost every day at the BFSI companies, and we are partnering with and collaborating with so many partners, vendors going ahead, and there are chances that somewhere there will be a data breach, somewhere they will compromise somewhere. So how do you think that they should address the security concerns?
So see, with every technology wave or every new technology that comes our way, they come with their associated security considerations, and hence security, I always believe, is a going concern. It's not something that you can just do, or or maybe there's just one tool or maybe even 5 pieces of software that can really solve that whole you can say the whatever is the risk, they cannot cover all that risk. So there are many frameworks and standards, which today with every technology, a lot of standards and frameworks are coming, and HP as a company strongly believes in these open frameworks and standards. We constantly ourselves in fact evolve these standards and contribute a lot of it back to them also. In fact, with so much of open standards today being adopted, there was a time when Unix was the order of the day. Today we don't, and Unix and everything very closely held at the customer's premise. But today we talk of open standards. We all want to go to industry standard architectures. We want interoperability. We want always this choice to move between the public and the private cloud with so many options available. Zero trust security is one concept. Again, these are concepts. There's not one solution that can really solve all the risks that are there. But zero trust security is something that guides us and the industry today. Hardware-based security is becoming extremely important to deliver another concept, which we say the trusted execution requirements. They've become the need of the hour. And just to give you a case in point, HP, each and every server of ours is, comes with a silicon root of trust. And this is one kind of a very revolutionary patented, security that is embedded into at the BIOS level, at the firmware level, and it actually protects customers, from firmware level attacks. So this is just a case in point. Another aspect we see today with containers, and again, this hybrid and this, you can say this heterogeneous jungle of hybrid that we have, service identity management is another, key consideration today, which is coming up. And again, an associated, the open security framework is the SPICE and SPIRE. And as I mentioned before, HP ourselves, people from our R&D are doing a lot of work around this framework. We are ourselves contributing to this framework. and we also help our customers to adopt, this framework. So it's also, I think, another thing is about the DevSecOps, right? Applications today are changing every day. There was a time when we used to release once in a while, or once in 3 months and 6 months. Today, we want to add application, features and functionalities every day. So so DevOps came into the picture, and now it is DevSecOps, because security is extremely important. And it's important to understand that, again, DevSecOps is not just about some security of the code. It is also a much broader aspect of compliance. So it's all about people, process, and technology, a combination of all three. And it's all about the frameworks, which we guide our customers and help them, pick and choose technologies or pieces of tools and softwares which will help them cover, all these risks. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
from our side.
Yeah, and I echo that, and I think, the principle of security has become shift left. It's not do it after application development, and like she said, now the technology available from companies like HP, etc., right from the chassis level to the firmware, they are protecting or bringing in protection on technology at those levels. But at the application level, as the operating model within our company at TU has become like shift left, which is DevSecOps. It's you make sure every day as the code is checked in, checked out, you are doing it at that point. You don't wait for one big, large code to come out and then you run and keep updating. So it's an everyday affair, and like she said, it's everything's becoming agile. So you got to shift left. It's a given.
Yeah, I think valid points. All right, and I think it was meaningful listening to both of you. I do agree. In fact, obviously, everybody echoes that the security is going to play a major role. Not now the digital, because digital is there; it's bound to happen. But how strong are we? Putting the measures, in fact, protect the firewalls and everything. I think is going to play the major role here. I think valid points, Mr. Kamak and Devika, from both of you. Thank you so much for taking part into this conversation and sharing your inputs. Thank you so much.